Popple, again, obviously using a pointed brush. Not quite. The story goes that Popple was so frustrated with a piece of tight, constrained lettering, probably some Roman capitals for a book jacket he was working on, using a ruling pen, that he said, "Sod this," in German, or more probably Czech, and made a passionate swipe at the paper with his loaded pen, and rather liked the line that formed. And this is trying to show you how you vary the width of the line with the ruling pen. Popple discovered this technique, but I don't think he was the true master of it. This is his star student, Werner Schneider. And here he uses a modified Redis pen, which is a nib you can buy in Germany and mainland Europe probably, for making monolines, like these letters by Rudolf von Larisch. And it exploits, he moves the reservoir around so that it traps the ink between two blades, and he uses it like a ruling pen. It's bloody hard to do. I don't know how he manages with it, but he's very good. David Howells. This is an interpretation of a very old letter, Rustica. Rustica is essentially the Trajan inscription in a hurry, and introduces all sorts of time-saving features, mainly a steep general angle, and then permission to use a variety of other angles if you need to. David's allowed this to seep into his whole approach, from these Neulandesque letters to these, to this. Arthur Baker's important contribution was to change the angle as needed, but to keep the nib on the paper, twisting the barrel of the pen between the thumb and forefinger. The second downstroke of the lowercase a tapers from about 90 degrees to 30 degrees in one single stroke. Baker also would turn the broad-edged pen on its corner when he wanted to. If he wanted a thin line, he'd just pop it on its corner and drag the ink. And that's where there are quite a few examples of it there. The K has just about everything going in it, I think. I really am lost for words here. When I first saw this, I need to go for a lie down. Baker's been a bit proprietorial about the twist pen technique, as if he owns it, but he's not the only one who's allowed to use it. Paul Freeman is jolly good. Hans-Joachim Burgert is almost an epiphany of good taste for me. This says, "Come down, love." It's a brush, not a pen. It's still twisted a lot. And Edward Cattish isn't all bad either. That looks to me like the kind of people might say, "You've just got too much time on your hands, haven't you?" A convergence of techniques is reached in the work of Jovica Veljovic. He does everything. He varies the speed of the writing, he openly double strokes and half draws some letters, he puts the pen on its corner and moves it around, he changes angles, he twists the pen. I hate him. Once the basics of writing and lettering have been learned, it's possible to make good letters with just about anything, like Bertold Wolper could do. I think he made this with the end of a piece of chewed carrot, is it? Or as Gerrit Noodzai has demonstrated, once you know what it's about, you can just scribble the letters into life. If you want rough edges to the letters, what Tony Forster and Phil Grimshaw used to call a knackered edge, you just write on rough paper. Or you just manipulate the pen in such a way that it looks rough, like I think Rick Cusick did here. But it's something that must be done properly, or it starts to look too contrived, as these, what I like to think of as rifle range letters do. However, I can't be too critical, because I've indulged myself also. This is from the Humana serif typeface. Forgive me. Isn't this a great quote by our sponsor? Notice I'm putting lots of references to Edward Johnston in here. This is Roger Excoffon's Mistral typeface. And let's just pause for a moment and bear in mind that this was a typeface designed for lead. This isn't something that's just been dashed off with a pen or a brush. It taught me that it's sometimes all right not to fret about letters having the same baseline. Where's the baseline? And for that matter, where's the X height? Then Hans-Joachim Burgert taught me that baselines weren't actually necessary. Well, weren't always necessary. He taught me it again, and again, and again. Okay, we'll now have a brief test. I'll show you several examples of Roman capitals, and I'd like you to guess which ones are written and which ones are lettered. You may shout out if you wish, but it's not essential. Finally, I'd just like to show you this astonishing example of writing, not lettering, but writing, by Rudolf von Larisch, who may possibly have had access to hallucinogenic drugs, or just been quite fond of knitting. Humana was a three-weight script, sans and serif family that are designed for ITC in the early 90s. It started out with these letters here, which eventually became digitized into these for Humana script. And then these are some of the interim drawings for Humana script. Maybe my comments at the bottom there, they're probably futile anyway. I wanted to create a Roman that would... Bloody hell, that looks terrible. It does look really nice on here. Maybe you should all come up here and have a look at it. I wanted to create a Roman that would go with the script character I'd made. So these are some letters I'd done with a thin felt pen in the mid-80s. And then I sort of started drawing outlines on tracing paper. And all of this was based on knowledge I'd accrued from brush studies like this. Oh, you can't see that at all. You do? No, actually, no, that's the deliberate minimal slide. But anyway, these are outlines of Humana. Very thin outlines made in Illustrator last night. So thin they've disappeared. So they really are thin. And they really, I just wanted to show you this and then talk about how I was using some software that many of you are familiar with called Icarus on the Macintosh. This is the early 90s. And I didn't have a digitizing tablet, and I wanted to get these letters on screen. I wanted a Roman that would go with the script, and I'd done all these studies and drawings, but then I was just so impatient, I just started clicking the points on the screen and then moving them around, which is not terribly friendly in Icarus, but that's how it was designed. Later on it was brought into Font Studio and refined, but that is actually how the typeface started. And yet everybody uses it because it looks like handwriting. I didn't know where to put this slide, but I did want to put it in, so I put it here. It shows how my working methods and scale seem to be changing towards type design and just about everything. These are some studies for sans serif letters, which I made after a lettering class. I was using a very big brush. There's an iPod there for scale. They're quite big, and there's lots of sort of reworking and fattening up, getting rid of the thins, really. This was a typeface I designed for Adobe in '95, I think. The story behind it is that I wanted to create a Roman that would work with Jovitsa's Ex Ponto. I should have a slide of that, really. Sorry. And what Jovitsa did was use this nib called the Browse 505. And so I used the same nib to make a Roman, which it didn't go, it doesn't work with Ex Ponto, but I thought it might be a nice starting point. The nib was it's a special L-shaped nib, which you can use to mimic the strokes of a brush. And it's designed by Carl Georg Hofer, Otmar's dad. No longer available. So these are the letters. Made straight off with that nib. And that's the type, which isn't a great deal different, really. I said in the booklet that I would also talk about the work of these designers, but I'm not. So I'm just going to show their names in big